Okay, so when you think of Napoleon Bonaparte, you probably think of one of the greatest military commanders in history, right? Well, today, we're not talking about Waterloo. Nope. We're going to dig into something way stranger. And believe it or not, a lot fluffier. An encounter that has become the stuff of absolute legend. So get this. Those are the words of one of Napoleon's own generals. And he's not talking about fighting the Austrians or the Russians. Oh no, he's describing a battle with a completely different kind of army. Sounds pretty unbelievable, right? Well, that's kind of the point. It just might be. So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth was one of the greatest military minds ever defeated by a bunch of fluffy rabbits? The story is just wild, but is it actually true? To figure that out, we've got to dive into the legend first, in all its crazy glory. So let's start with the most dramatic version of the story. All right, picture this. It's 1807. Napoleon has just signed the treaties of Tilsit. He's basically ended the war with Russia. The man is at the absolute peak of his power. So, to celebrate, his chief of staff, a guy named Alexandre Berthier, decides to throw a party. A grand rabbit hunt, to be specific. Now, Berthier wasn't exactly a guy who did things by halves. He reportedly gets his hands on, wait for it, up to 3,000 rabbits for this thing. I mean, he's trying to impress the emperor, right? So an epic hunt with thousands of targets probably seemed like a brilliant idea. What could possibly go wrong? And this is where it gets really good. What's so fascinating is how the legend tells it. This wasn't just some chaotic stampede. No. It's framed as a calculated military move. The cages fly open, and instead of scattering like you'd expect, the rabbits charge. They supposedly split into two flanking columns, surround the entire hunting party, and make a beeline straight for the commander-in-chief himself, Napoleon. His men are trying to beat them back with riding crops, with sticks, anything they can find, but it's totally useless. The bunnies just swarm Napoleon. They're piling up between his legs until he's literally stumbling. He's forced into a full-on retreat, running to his carriage, and some rabbits are even said to have leaped in after him. Just imagine it. The conqueror of Europe completely defeated by bunnies. I mean, what a story. It's incredible. Almost a little too incredible, you know? So this is where we have to put on our detective hats. Was Napoleon really run off the field by a rabbit rebellion? Or has the story gotten a little bigger over the years? Let's take a look at the evidence. Okay, so this super dramatic, action-packed version of the story, the one everyone loves to tell, it comes almost entirely from one single source, the memoirs of a General Paul Thibault, which were published after he died. And, well, that single source, it's got some issues. Let's just break this down. First off, these memoirs, they weren't published until the 1890s. That's almost 100 years after this supposedly happened. Memories get fuzzy, right? Second, Theobald apparently had a pretty serious grudge against Berthier, the guy who organized the hunt, and this story makes Berthier look like a total, incompetent fool, which is a pretty sweet form of revenge from beyond the grave. And finally, and this is a big one, no other accounts from that time describe anything like this frantic, military-style rabbit attack. So, if Theobald's version is questionable, where did this story even come from? This is where the investigation gets really, really cool. If his account is like the big-budget Hollywood blockbuster version, what did the original scripts look like? Turns out we can actually trace how this story changed over time. And the best way to do it is to go backwards. If we look at the sources in reverse, we can see the legend being built up, layer by layer. It's kind of like a historical game of telephone. Okay, so we start at the end, 1894, with General Thibault's crazy battle scene. Now let's hit rewind. Go back to 1811. An anti-Napoleonic writer tells the story, but in his version, Napoleon isn't terrified, he's just really, really angry that the hunt was a total bust. Okay, let's rewind even more, all the way back to the year 1800. We find the earliest version we know of in a French newspaper, and you're not going to believe this. In this telling, Napoleon isn't scared. He's not angry. He's delighted. See the difference? The legend gives us a terrified emperor running for his life. The original story gives us an amused leader who's just enjoying this completely bizarre and hilarious situation. It's the same basic event, but the whole emotional core of the story is flipped on its head. But here's the thing. There's one key detail that's the same in every single version, from the very first one to the most exaggerated one. The organizer made a critical mistake. He bought tame, hutch rabbits from local farmers instead of wild ones. Think about it. These animals weren't afraid of people at all. They saw humans and thought, food. They weren't charging Napoleon's army to attack. They were swarming him because they thought it was dinner time. So, now that we have all this evidence, we can start to piece together what probably really happened. It's time to strip away all that fluff, all that legend, and get down to the historical reality. Okay, here's the most plausible scenario. A rabbit hunt was definitely organized. The organizer definitely messed up and bought tame rabbits. Because they were hungry, they swarmed the hunting party looking for a handout. And Napoleon, he was probably totally amused by the whole ridiculous fiasco. Then, over the next 100 years, that funny little story got twisted. First by his political enemies who wanted to make him look like he had a temper, and then later by a bitter general who wanted to make him look like a coward. So in the end, Napoleon's infamous defeat by the bunnies, it wasn't a battle at all. It was just a really, really amusing logistical blunder. A total failure of event planning, not a failure of military genius. You know, this whole story about Napoleon and the rabbits is a perfect example of what we call a historical narrative. It really shows you how a real quirky little event can be shaped and twisted over time. The exact same story can make a guy look good-humored, or hot-tempered, or even like a coward. It all just depends on who's telling the story and why. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, if a story this famous can get so completely twisted, what other true stories that we all know from history are really just, the most entertaining version of what actually happened? It's a fantastic reminder to always ask, where did this story come from?